Hello people from the internet, how is it going? I'm Shida Rangan, but you can call me Shida. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon is one of my favorite games that I've played in the past few years. And since I don't want everyone to think this is a Castlevania channel, I decided to do a completely different video this time. Yay, Bloodstained video, not like Castlevania at all. A few disclaimers before we start. This game only has 10 bosses. Well, technically only 9, but I decided that the last boss, Remini, should have each of its phases separated in this list, due to me having very different opinions on each stage. Anyway, having such a low number of bosses in a polished game like this makes ranking these enemies a tough job. So assume a certain margin of error. On a different day maybe I would rank these bosses in another order, and some close spots would end up changing places. With all that being said, let's start the video. Number 10. Remini, first phase. The absolute last place on this list. Hey guys, real quick, turns out this is Remini instead of Remini. I've been saying it wrong for years, no clue how this happened. I say it wrong for the whole thing. Sorry. Please enjoy the rest of the video. I've beaten this game about 6 times and I still don't understand his attack pattern very well. And that's kind of the worst part, because if I don't understand the boss, it means that it can be beaten by brute forcing it. Well, that may be easy to say when you have all your abilities, right? No, it's easy regardless. I always expected that this boss would give me trouble when I decided to do my solo Zangetsu run, with no skills, also known as the Nightmare's End run, in which you neither kill or recruit any character. But even in this run I managed to brute force it by just using Zangetsu fire buff spell and attacking. I do understand to some extent that the movement of his hand signifies in which way the bats will come from, but on top of that, he moves towards you, and the spheres he summons are essentially unavoidable depending on your positioning, so I always found best to not play his game. When I found out about the Nightmare boss rush mode, I did think for a few days that maybe he was hard, but I found out that by using the fire spell from Alfred, you can avoid 80% of his attacks, so this boss is pretty much undoable, a pushover with the right tools, or even an annoying battle in which you have to just tank the hits and keep attacking. This being one of my favorite games, it means that even when I shit on something, I can share some good qualities. The whole aesthetic of the battle is pretty cool, the stained glasses, his looks in general, the bats there are very reminiscent of the locusts that Abaddon summons in Dawn of Sorrow, which is pretty nice. All the bats present in the stage are his doing, and it's a very cool stage too, so I guess there is that. It's just disappointing to me that at best this is barely a boss, and at worst I can't even properly fight against it. Number 9. Focalor is the only boss in this game that is not in Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which by itself is mysterious enough for me to give some shit about it. Let me know if you want me to do a video about that. His arena looks cool, haha. I like the environment aspect of it. He shoots water in the ceiling, which makes the ice fall down. Then you have to jump in the platform to get enough height to avoid his next move. It's pretty interesting. Well, unless you are using Miriam. Let's get this out of the way. Many bosses are very well optimized for being enemies for Miriam, but Focalor is the only one that makes this painfully obvious. Yeah, makes sense, we just acquired her as a new character, why not display how useful she is against a boss tailor-made to be beaten by her? Anyway, if you're using Miriam, this boss is alright. If you're not, especially if your only option is Zangetsu, it is a little bit too hard for my taste, in particular for the second boss of the game. I also don't like when he moves in this curved motion, I don't know, gets me angry. I never feel safe. His final attack is also pretty hard to avoid. You have to either jump out of the way or attack, but I think the window is a little too short. This is only really a problem on the boss rush mode because your HP stays the same between fights, with little opportunity to heal. I end up just mashing buttons and hoping that it works. Overall, this is not a terrible boss, I even enjoy it to some extent, but some of them have to be low on the list, right? Number 8. Gluten Train. This thing is the first boss. Dying against it is already a challenge on itself, even on Nightmare mode. In here we start to live in the realm of bosses that I mostly did not enjoy. This is the perfect middle ground for us entering the mid tier of the list, because the only problem this boss has is that it is so boring. Jump on the pile of charcoal, attack as much as possible, avoid the fire rain or the blast, and repeat. The major problem I have with it all is that whenever I try to escape his pattern, I end up being punished. And the reason I want to escape the routine is because it's just so boring. Why do I have to be patient in a video game? Also, unless there's some smart wordplay here, I find his name a little dumb. Gluten Train. Well, yeah, it's descriptive. He's a train, he eats, he spits, all the other bosses have such cool demonic names to scare your grandma, and this one just feels out of place to me. In the end, this boss is just an easy boss for beginners, and then it just becomes this formality you have to do every time. Quick tangent, if somehow you end up watching this video without having played this game, I don't know, maybe the other Castlevania gameplay style scares you, this one is kinda perfect for beginners, it's the one I started with. I think it's super fair, forgiving, and beginner friendly. And it's a great entrance to the genre, you should totally check it out. It also probably runs on your machine, and it's not an expensive game. Anyway, let's move on. Number 7. Oh Bub. Bloodless. What? Are you putting the waifu at number 7? Unsubscribe! Yeah, it kinda hurts me too. Originally this was higher on the list, but the more I thought about it, well, let's just say some good ones have to stay lower, right? This fight as a whole has a lot of charm. Well, yeah, this game uses charm in general, but they certainly didn't spare any for this lady. Her cute laughter gives more personality than whatever she had in Ritual of the Night. I don't know to what extent her name is a pun on the word lass, which means girl, and I only know that because I used to play Grand Chase and this badass ninja was called Lass for some reason. Always made me confused. Isn't Bloodless something that means that it has no blood? Isn't that a little contradictory? Like, she has a lot of blood. Maybe that's why she drains it? Because she doesn't have any? I don't know, let me look it up. Revolution or conflict without violence? Nah, I don't think that's it. Skin or part of the blood drainage of color? Oh, because she's so pale. Cold or unemotional? Okay, I get it now. With this information, her portrayal on Ritual of the Night makes more sense. But I still prefer this one. Okay, back to the game. She has these umbrellas floating around. You hit them so they stay still for you to jump and attack her. They can also cover you from her blood rain attack, which is very reminiscent of this attack by this boss in Castlevania Order of Ecclesia. Her attack can also taint the entire area with blood, which I think is a nice touch. And she's also so cute when she laughs. So why is she so low on the list? Hitting her is so hard. I honestly don't know how I did so well in the gameplay footage in the background. Getting the umbrellas in the back to align in a way that you can put some good hits in, it's very challenging. It feels a little too much RNG. She can kinda run over you as well if you're not careful. Add the fireball that she constantly summons to throw a wrench in your plans, and turns out that with all this charisma, this is just not a battle that I enjoy doing that much. Especially on the boss rush mode since she's so late in the run. Getting a bad Bloodless fight can completely ruin your chances of success. If Jibo is with you, or if you're willing to use a lightning spell, this fight can be pretty smooth, to the point in which it lasts very little. So similarly to the number 10 in this list, I'm either thinking that it's too hard or too easy, but to a lesser extent, it's usually not completely trivial nor completely impossible. Her final attack can also feel pretty random. If you do not set up the umbrellas properly, this thing is hitting you. And God forbid you are in the middle of the arena. One minor thing that bothers me in her stage is this corridor with infinite cat ladies. The stage portion before you get to this boss can be pretty challenging as well. Well, I guess I have to use the stage sometimes to lower some entrances, because this top 10 is hard enough as it is. Anyway, sorry for putting your waifu at number 7. Number 6. Valak. Velix is a boss I have mixed feelings towards. I really like it visually. Two dragon serpent things that breathe fire and shoot deadly bows. I like the way he interacts with the scenery as well. He entangles himself with the tower we've been climbing up this whole stage, which helps to transmit the idea of how massive this thing is. It is also the only boss that has a second phase besides the final boss. Once you hit his head a bit, they mingle with one another, turning into this behemoth of a creature. I wish I was like this with my crush right now. Haha, sorry for those max spoilers. His second phase gives me similar vibes to Gluten Train. It's super repetitive, and the only reason it's not boring is because in here you can actually die if you're not quick on your feet, don't pay attention, or act greedy. Besides the most overpowered options, like using the axe, the ice alongside with Zangetsu buff, or spamming the lightning as Alfred, there is not much you can do to make this part easier. Thankfully, with a little patience, it's no big deal. By the way, can I just mention how cute it is when he shows up and screams? The reason my feelings are mixed, again, is that if you have a good set of tools against it, like the fire or the bat, this boss becomes kinda trivial, while if you don't have these tools it can be painful. On the Nightmare boss rush mode, man, this is a mouthful. I wanted to save the fire spell from Alfred for the first phase of Remini, and the bat for Bloodless final attack. And look how boring this fight becomes. You barely have any opportunity to attack. I wish it was just a little better design. For instance, on Nightmare End mode, it has these bite attacks that it uses to compensate the fact that you can't really beat him alone with Zangetsu. I kinda wish that the boss was more like this. After managing to beat him in these conditions, I kinda grew to like the challenge, even though I wish it was different. And in any other situation this boss is fine, so it stays at number 6. Number 5. Bathing. We finally get to the middle of the list. This is one of the bosses that I much prefer his appearance in this game over Ritual of the Night. To be honest, this is the case for all of them, but especially here. He's fast, he looks cool, he's a nerd, and has a snake for a tail. I used him as a creature in my D&D homebrew setting, but my players never got to it. So he certainly had an impact on me to some extent. If this last sentence made no sense to you, just ignore it. His final attack has him running so fast that he collides with himself. And I have to say, this is super metal. There is very little I can say about this boss negatively. This jump he does sometimes feels pretty unfair, his needles can feel pretty unavoidable, and I think he tanks a little too much for a boss that doesn't give too many openings for attacks. But I guess that's fair since he's almost the final boss. I really just wish I knew what he was reading. If you know, let me know in the comments. This entry is kinda short, what else can I say? Well, I played this game before Ritual of the Night, and seeing how frenetic and extravagant this fight is, I gotta say I was really disappointed when in Ritual of the Night he was like this. Yeah, that's it. Moving on. Number 4. Andre Alphus. I don't wanna sound repetitive, but this fight is so cool. I really enjoy how much stuff is going on in this battle, somehow without being overwhelming. Fighting on top of the mast is the coolest thing ever. Just like in Round of Blood against Death, the storm is constantly pushing you, so you have to manage it. It is a bit hard to hit him in the air, but I feel like you have enough tools for the job no matter the situation. I would often use the bat from Jibel or the chain from Zangetsu. I like how he shows exactly where his lightning rods are going to land. He also has this roar range attack, and you have to duck. The wind is very obviously a nod to Storm Eagle from Mega Man X, I think? And by the way, crouching to not be pushed by wind is something that I feel it happened more back in the day. I remember this happening in Power Rangers the movie for the SNES. I will get to talk about this game someday, such a great game. Are there other games with this mechanic? I feel like there's more, but I cannot remember right now. Anyway, oh and look, his little peacock fan. It spins during his tornado attack. This boss is very derivative, but so original at the same time. I just love it so much. The only thing I don't like about it is this attack that you have to jump over him. Sometimes it feels a little clunky, but overall this boss sits in a sweet spot in which it doesn't matter if you decide to go against him using the right tools or not, it's always very enjoyable. Well, at least to me. that Alphas is the same demon as a Dramelech? I know this because I have this Goetia bestiary with a list of several demons, for satanic reasons, and by that I mean playing Dungeons & Dragons. I just thought it was cool. I wonder if Iga has one of these. Several Castlevania demons are here, like Beer, Stolas, Malphas and others. I just wanted to share that. Number 3. Zangetsu. For this entry, we have to start with its build-up. First you have to beat the game saving everyone, then you unlock the Nightmare mode. You beat most of the game again, but instead of going to the final stage where you face Remini, you are sent to a different one. Each character has to go through a little gauntlet with a sub-boss in the end, which not gonna lie is not that fun, it's just an excuse for a stage. It is also not that hard, which in here I think it works in its favor. Then they unlock this stairway that goes down instead of up, which feels significant if you played any other Castlevania game, and I'm pretty sure I can bullshit my way around here talking about the symbolism, on how this is the 9th layer of hell and we are descending into it even deeper, which is likely intended since this is the stage 9, but the point I'm really trying to get is that with all of this, and in the end, these slices statues just before the boss, they would have to screw up really hard for all this build up not to pay off. And thankfully they delivered. As soon as you enter the battle, you see this. I don't think I have to say what this is a reference to. One thing that I haven't mentioned yet in this video is the music. And in part, this is because most of the bosses don't have their own theme. This is one of the only times they do have a song for themselves. And really, this may be my favorite song in the game. In this fight, we only really play as Mirin, and our allies provide support against certain attacks from Zangetsu. If I must say something negative about this fight, I would say I would prefer if he had a sword instead of a scythe. I just don't think it fits him too well. Sometimes when Jibbo becomes a swarm of bats, it despawns a little too early, so you gotta be on the air. I also think it's worth mentioning that in the room before the boss you can always get 1 life, so in a way you already won since you can't game over. It doesn't really matter much in this case because I have 17 lives, but it sends a message. The devs don't really want to provide you a challenge here, they just want you to enjoy the spectacle. And although I'm fine with this, it's also partially why this boss isn't higher on the list. I think I only played this stage twice since this is the only run in which it's possible to face this boss. He also doesn't show on the boss rush, so I had less time to appreciate it. But even with that setting him back, it is still the number 3 on my list. Oh, and even I gotta admit that the scythe looks cool here. Number 2. Remini. Second phase. I bet you were waiting for this. Maybe you were thinking that he was going to be number 1, with his first phase at number 10. Well, that's not the case. I wonder if you can remember who the number 1 is. Anyway, although his build-up is not as impressive as the one from the previous entry, his one is also pretty cool. The tower raises with you on top of it, you see the starry sky and the full moon. But then, the moon is part of the boss, and it can manipulate it. Can you imagine fighting such an eldritch creature? The moon is but a mere coin to be flipped by it. So yeah, this boss has a lot of style. This is the final boss and the song doesn't disappoint. It really gets me hyped. On normal gameplay, this boss is mostly pretty easy. Not a complete pushover since you are already in risk of falling off stage. But even on Nightmare End's run, it isn't too hard. And talking about Zangetsu, look at how cool it is when you finish the fight with him. You have to hold the attack button and then release it. They didn't have to go the extra mile, but they did and I appreciate it. But my main impression comes from the Nightmare boss rush. As far as I know, it's the only way to face this boss on Nightmare difficulty, since usually in his place we would face Zangetsu. His moon attacks become a lot faster, essentially undodgeable. I pretty much don't bother trying to hit them, and I use the fire spell instead. I usually don't plug my VOD channel because it's mostly where I just save my strings, but if you wanna see me doing this fight, I'm gonna leave the link in the description. In case you wanna see it, because I was really euphoric since it took me like 2 strings to get there with a strategy that even had a chance of facing him. Yes, my god, this was so hard. Oh yeah, and I also stream on Twitch twice a week, by the way. Did I mention that he throws an actual moon at you? And he did it before it was cool. Well, actually Thanos did it first, god damn it. This moon attack has him locking you in place with these beams that are annoying to dodge in this difficulty. And if the things I'm saying here are making it sound negative, it's because it is, but if you play this game and love it as much as I did, and then about a year later you found out that it has a secret hard mode, and after some struggle you barely made it through, you would also be on top of the world when you beat it. So basically, when he's easy, he's super fun, and when on hard mode he becomes the final boss you would expect from a Castlevania game. Which is kinda unexpected in a game that is pretty easy most of the time. It really isn't a boss that you can just keep trying until you succeed. You have to develop a strategy with all the tools you have available, defeating most of the bosses before him perfectly. In a sense, it's more akin to a puzzle, not a test of skill. But it's still hard. I get excited just remembering how it went. Well, if you watched the video so far, I assume you're enjoying it. So before we get to our number 1, consider leaving a like. Subscribe if you like Castlevania and Bloodstained. I'm trying to get to 100 subs. And ring the bell to receive a notification when a new video drops. Also, follow me on Twitch if you enjoy this sort of stuff. And leave a comment down below. What is your top 10 like and why? Let me know. And finally, number 1. Focalor. So, after all the nice things I said about the previous entries, how does Focalor compares? Not that well, really. I guess I could have placed him somewhere around number 3, and honestly it wouldn't feel completely wrong to me. So, why is he so high on my list? Let's get the obvious out of the way first. He looks cool as fuck, he's a construct made of gold. Just by looking at him, you get the feeling that he's a trickster. No deal happens in which this guy doesn't come off on top. And the whole battle takes place in his horde. Common knowledge would dictate that if you defeat him, his loot would be yours. And this guy has so much to spare, he even uses his cash to hit you. He tries to squish you with his freaking wallet. He also summons enemies that are covered in gold, or are made of gold. Something we only see here. To damage him, you must hit it on the face or destroy his coins. Which is interesting because it hints at the idea that every single coin here is part of him. But to be honest, the fight itself, it's amusing, it's fun. His final attack kinda sucks, I often get hit unfairly. But there's 2 things this boss does that I find to be completely amazing. The whole stage has this ancient Egypt-like motif to it, and you just assume it's the average sand level. But what if it's actually gold, and this whole structure is part of the boss to some extent? The gold level to me is a lot more interesting than the sand level. It even has a place with fire that could suggest that the gold is melted there. Maybe I'm looking too much into it since I think the devs would make an effort to make the area a little more shiny, but the level is called the Brilliant Void, which I guess it counts for something. And then the second thing I have to mention about this boss is basically the same as the first one. When you kill it, it's revealed that all this gold is actually a sinister pile of bones. So now everything gets recontextualized again. All the shiny gold I was seeing was actually made of corpses of his previous victims, who lured by his treasure dared to face him. Can you see why I like this boss so much? It tells a story, with plot twists and all. I assume that if we went back the way we came, we would end up seeing just more and more piles of bones. But in the end, even if it turns out I'm wrong, which I'm pretty sure there is evidence for it being the case, it is fun enough that I could have a blast just pondering about it. This boss left such a big impression on me that I made him show up on my tabletop RPG game as a boss. With a similar plot twist. I won't get too much into it because I don't want this to become a D&D video, but let's just say in my game his soul ended up inside the body of a duck. The players even had him for a pet. And the fact that he became a recurrent character makes this feedback loop in which he is my favorite not only because he was impressive in the video game, but because it was relevant in my tabletop game as well. Me and my friends have a story to tell about this guy. To me, he's not real, but he also exists somewhere between the video game and reality. When the name Focalor comes to my mind, I don't immediately think of Curse of the Moon. I think of the times my friends turned the demon into a duck. How would he not be my favorite? That's it for the list, guys. I hope the ending wasn't disappointing and this list didn't come off as something superfluous that someone did in 5 minutes. Top 10 videos are honestly harder than I first expected. If you want to see more Curse of the Moon content, or if you just like the video in this format and would like to see more, let me know in the comments. Curse of the Moon deserves way more love and recognition, to be honest. With all that being said, thanks for watching. I have a few Symphony of the Night challenge run videos if you wanna watch. I want to see you here again next time. Have a spooky night, and goodbye.